Hi, in this video I will talk about my microscope I use in the dental office. It's a Flexion Twin Blue and I prepared a little lecture for you so you know all the details. Basically this is a picture of my room where the camera is standing now, and I have just one room in my dental office where I can do treatments, and I basically did everything in a way that is the most ergonomic for me. So basically I'm very fortunate that I'm a scope user since 2012. In my first job, my boss basically brought a microscope, and I kind of knew that I have to work a lot of the microscope, and 10 years later I even opened my own office, and I'm basically specialized in endodontics and vital pulp therapy. This is basically the things I do in my dental office. And so, like most of the dentists in Germany who basically started using microscopes, the first experience with a microscope was a Zeiss Pico Xenon, basically, which was the scope you could get at a reasonable price at your dental dealer, and that's it. And when I first was introduced to scope, I basically knew I have to find an office where I can work most of the time with the scope. And it basically turned out that we were using the scope so much that we even had to buy a second scope. This was a Zeiss Pico LED, and there's always this argument which light source was better at the time, and basically xenon is very loud, and it was kind of the cooling of the xenon was always something which has annoyed me, because there was a van inside and I really didn't like it. Yeah. Also, at the time, the Zeiss Pico was discontinued, so when we wanted to buy the third scope in the office, we basically took the CJ Flexion Advanced, and I basically later changed my job to a different location, and there in the dental office we had a Zeiss Pro Ergo, and usually the Zeiss Pro Ergo, it was with xenon, is basically marketed as a top-notch thing in microscope dentistry, and it's really good, like this all this zoom stuff. You don't have to change anything on the scope, you can all do it on the handles. Really neat, even the magnet breaks, but the price tag associated with the Zeiss Pro Ergo is basically it's two Flexion scopes, and where I was for my own office, I wasn't really so much, how do you call it, so satisfied with the Zeiss Pro Ergo that I knew kind of that I will buy a Flexion for sure. And when CJ Optics came out with even like an updated version of their Flexion, the Twin Blue, but I come later to that. I also give lectures in some places in Germany, so I had the chance to work with Zumex OMS, and it's basically they were inspired about the Pro Ergo from Zeiss. They basically upgraded it in a way with even like the filter. I liked it, but I basically found out that I don't need these magnetic brakes, although they sound cool. So it was clear for me that I basically wouldn't look into much the Zumex scopes all the way, although they're probably very decent scopes like the Zeiss as well. And during some workshop I was even able to work with the Zeiss Extaro, which is also a really nice scope. A lot of people like it in Germany, but I can't really tell you anything about it clinical, the Zumex and the Extaro, because I haven't worked with them clinical. But I can tell you a lot about my microscope, because I basically attached Sony Alpha 7 on the camera, and the reason for this camera is pretty easy, because you can make, or your assistant basically can always see what you're seeing in the microscope. So we have another huge screen in the room where she can basically watch whatever I'm doing, and it's really good for the workflow. And let me tell you one thing, if you ever buy a scope for example, endodontics, The average assistant is really bored doing endodontics because they don't see what you're doing, they don't know what you're doing. But this changes a lot if they suddenly can see what you're doing. So if you have a microscope, you have to have an HDMI cable connections, so it's transferred to a screen where the assistant can see it. And that's very important. Basically, this was the setup I basically started with. The Vario focus port down here had like a small handle I can turn to make it a bit more sharper. What I also like is that the camera is basically over here and not on this side, so neither the assistants or I don't hit their head on the camera. I think CJ is the only manufacturer who's actually has this option that the camera is mounted on a spot where it's not hurting anyone, and I mean that literally. Yeah. And the Vario focus is really great, and with the new one you basically just need to turn it. You can have a lot of distance. Yeah, it's basically crazy how much it is. For example, I want to show it to you in a second. When you look at this, basically this is now the maximum magnification, and you can see the picture over here, not the best picture right now, but I will change it later. And now I basically turn it completely up, and so you can basically see what I'm seeing. I don't want. Yeah. And that's basically now the maximum. So basically now I get a sharp image over here, and wow, it's a lot. It's over 30 centimeters for sure, which is really handy. Yeah, so it's crazy. I mean, in the old days, with the first size Pico generation, which didn't have this kind of varioscope, we had to move the patient chair up and down in order to get a sharp image, because we didn't have these different working distances with over 30 centimeters or something. Yeah. When it comes to making a picture, CJ has something called sensor unit. It's basically a little remote attached to the microscope, and it's very self-explaining. You have the video option or the picture option. You don't need a lot of more. And it's quite neat, and actually there's even a text option over there which displays in which mode you're in it right now. And what I also like, that all the cables are pretty much all there. We have the energy part over here, then when we have the HDMI output over here, and even like USB output, which is really nice. They're all included in the arm. There's no loose wires hanging around. And believe me, it's sometimes when I had my Pro Ergo, I attached like the same Sony Alpha 7 on it, and I basically had this cable just laying around in the room because it was like a ceiling mount and it was not possible to basically get this cable inside. So CJ did a really nice job in like providing these cables right from the beginning. Yeah. You have some alternatives to these imaging ports depending on your camera. They basically support a lot of cameras, but you have also the HD version and even the option to just connect the phone to the scope. And my friend Javier Tapia basically told me that recording with a phone is really great. So I also tested the phone imaging port, and I didn't like it. The picture quality was not a lot better. You had to kind of fiddle around with these adapters. I had an iPhone, so to get it on HDMI, it was kind of too much fiddling around. So my assistant has like a nice image on the screen, and I couldn't use the imaging port because basically the manufacturer can't have a solution for every phone which is out there, even like the iPhone. So I had to touch the screen in order to start the camera, to start the video, make a picture. And the workflow was really not as pleasant when it comes to transferring the pictures from an Apple device to a MacBook, for example. I mean, you could say just use AirDrop, and it works for pictures, AirDrop, but not for a video. It takes forever, yeah. And basically, Javier told me that with the USB-C on the iPhone Pro, you can do some workaround, have an external drive on it and everything, yeah. But still, I didn't really like the option to have a phone on it. And actually there was a change even on the scope I'm using right now with the imaging port, which basically tells me that I don't need this phone at all anymore. Yeah. I already told you that I have a twin blue light inside. So this is just a quick video from the Sony Alpha 7, how it basically looks. You can see that the porcelain ceramic crown has some different color, but you can basically distinguish it from the natural fluences of the tooth, and you could see the fluorescence of the composite, which is quite good. So we also have different filters, and for myself, I'm basically just most of the time using a white filter and of course a natural light filter. I mean, the past with the Pro Ergo, we only had the option to use an orange filter, so the composite doesn't cure. Like with the natural light filter, we kind of filtered out some bluish light, so the composite doesn't cure, and it works really good. Yeah, I basically, once you have a natural light filter, you don't need an orange filter anymore. And I don't do a lot of surgery, so I can't tell you anything about the green filter. Yeah, but what's really neat, I already talked about, is that they display everything with a small text, because sometimes when I work with the Extaro workshop, I barely know in which modus I'm inside now, because you basically have to know it or know it from the manual. If you experience working on a daily basis with it, it's probably not a problem at all. But if you're just there for a workshop 2 or 3 times a year, you don't really know which filter you're in. Yeah. A switch on the side for the fluorescence filter, and Dr. Carlos Garcia used to make really great pictures on videos with this filter, and with the new camera setup I might be able to also reproduce these kind of videos, so you can look forward for that. And it's really neat. Actually, my German dealer basically recommend to use like the dual LED, so that I get some kind of boost and even more light. But I was always happy with the light from the normal Flexion Advanced, so I never really wanted to change that. And I personally really like the blue light. There's no day in a week or during the day, during the treatment, where I don't use that, because it's a really good quality, and you kind of can see things like caries. If suddenly you can see cracks sometimes if there's bacteria inside and they're reddish. It's really nice. Yeah. We also have like a polarization light inside, polarization filter, anti-glare mode. That's a thing I barely use. I can show it you in a second as well. But it's nice for when you do an anterior filling to kind of select the shades. That's kind of neat, but it's nothing I use on a daily basis. So these are some pictures with the Sony Alpha 7. That's just first with my Canon camera, like with the flash and the DSLR picture. And I basically, when I wanted to start the retreatment, I saw that there were some cracks, which was not as pleasant for me, because I had basically was already finished after 10 minutes for a 2-hour treatment. But that's dentistry. And then I was able to take some pictures. And you see the Sony Alpha 7 picture is quite good, not as good as the DSLR, but it's a little bit not as crisp, yeah. And with fluorescence, it's super hard to make good pictures, and I probably tried a lot to get the right picture so you can see something, but it's just something to show you guys over there. But now we have a new camera system at CJ. It's basically will be shown to everyone at the IDS, and I'm really happy that I was already able to make some pictures to use it before. And it's crazy, that's the scope picture and it's looking really good, the scope picture on the left. And with the fluorescence on, you basically see what I'm talking. There's some leftover composite, that's non-fluorescing composite, and even like this little thing, yeah. Maybe you want to remove that to get a nice adhesion. You don't want to have too much old composite over there sometimes. Yeah, and that's this art picture. Of course, you see something's different here. Yeah, for example, the crack over here is a bit more visible here. Yeah, but that's really minor things, and it's crazy good. Yeah. Also some side-by-side pictures, just like over here, that's the new camera, and over here DSLR with flash, and you can have the options to even like have some kind of filter. You switch that with basically switch them with the remote of the new camera. It's really good. Yeah, it's basically what I see in the camera as well. So, and now I want to basically switch back to the thing and just tell you some things I already talked about. First, just something really minor. What's really great is that we have here standard photographic equipment. Yeah, basically once this lens is scratched, and it's really good idea that this lens basically is, how do you call it? Once it's maybe too dirty, we just go to a camera store and get a new one. Of course, you can get it from your CJ dealer, pretty sure. I already talked with you about this varioscope, and before it I had something like over here to turn, and when I had a mirror in my or something in my hands, I had to put it away. So turning it, it's really a really good idea. Yeah. Here I have some, first make it a bit sharper, can have different things here to adjust the light from small to big. Yeah, it's something I rarely use. I just have it on maximum and it's fine for me. Of course, you can change the magnification over here, yeah, which is something I rarely use. That's the maximum magnification right now. Let's make it a bit sharper for you. Yeah, but it's nothing I use clinically. Basically, this is the maximum usually, and that's really pretty much fine for me. When it comes to the logo in the upright, it's just on this live view. When you record a video, the logo is not inside, and you basically have the right motors you're using, and you just like this joystick, you just push it and it's changing from orange light to green light, what I never really use, but basically it's, for me, it's natural light or the white motors. And you can see that there's some changing here as well. That's the part where you just change the magnification. And in the beginning I thought, well, that's a lot of things I have to pay attention, but that's really obvious here. That's really obvious, and I rarely have to change anything here. And when it comes to fluorescence mode, I basically have to switch this one to get this bluish light. And the neat thing, I can even like adjust it over here, and it's kind of crazy that it has it even like you feel that there's a different energy in this blue light. I never tried to cure anything with it, but it's very interesting. Yeah, and before I forget it, when you can turn the knot here, you can change the intensity of the light as well. I usually I'm at 100% regular mode, so it's nothing for me. Yeah, and this is basically the new camera over here. It's already left the prototype phase, and it's really neat. They even put the CJ logo on here. It's the same as over here. And when it comes to this one, I even have like these things where you can basically change the distance between the oculars. Yeah, and usually what I recommend is that you just, when you set it up, you just have like this two lines coming out. Yeah, and you can even like remove them quite easily. I don't do it right now. And you have something like called, if you're wearing glasses, you could adjust your dioptrin over here as well. So you can't see that. Yeah. But I basically use contact lenses, and some Pico had kind of a mirror interface. They just have, you can turn it away, and they have something they call it a ball, but I basically never really need to move it because I just had some settings where I can move it a little bit, and which is enough for me. Yeah. So once I had the setting, I never really touched it again. And when it comes to the arm, basically the HDMI cable, which is coming out here, is also attached to basically the white plug. So the arm, they really thought about a lot of things, and they even changed now some spots to USB-C and USB for the energy sources. So it's really neat. Yeah. So what else can I tell you about the scope? Maybe we now just switch to the camera mode here. So you basically see these filters in action again, and basically that's something over here. Usually my assistant is switching the filter to something which works better. Yeah. And you just go through here. Yeah. And that's pretty much what I would kind of see in terms of fluorescence, and it's quite neat. Let me go back here, and that's basically what I see. And you should see my assistant. Basically, she basically completely freaked out when we got this new camera 1 week ago, because the quality is now much better. Yeah. And the small remote over here is really handy. I can basically just start the gallery function here when I recorded something. That's how it looks. And when it comes to recording, actually it's also important. I basically now just touch this button for recording, and when you suddenly see like a small red dot down there, which is really handy, yeah, because with the Sony Alpha 7 it just made a small sound, and I wasn't always sure is it recording now or not, because I couldn't see it on the display. Or when I take a picture now, I can see a small feedback, and that's it. And CJ Optics and Carsten Jung, the owner, really put a lot of thought in this really cool camera. So I'm basically coming quite to an end with my lecture, but I still want to show you something. Yeah, this one here. Yeah, because that's a little video I made with the new camera, and you basically see how fast it can basically switch from fluorescence mode to normal mode, and it picks up everything, which is I actually told them you just need like an insta real view mode, so the people can share it directly to social media, and that's it. Yeah. And I mean, we played a bit around with this in this video with this different kind of filters, and it's quite funny. Or let's say we are still working on it to find the right settings. Yeah. If you ask yourself what is that small ring over here, yeah, basically the chair is a Brumaba chair, a German company, and it's like the microsurge ring, so I can put my hands on it as well. It's so super ergonomic. I just don't only have this ergonomic chair over here, but also something for my hands to rest, and my assistant is using it as well. Yeah, that was my small lecture about microscopes. If you have a question, you can of course email me or reach me via social media. So there will be some clinical videos in the future for sure, because it's really fun to work with this new camera from CJ. It's very unique, and it's really cool that they allowed me to test it. Actually, I first wanted to make this kind of review with the old setup because I didn't know anything about the camera. So it's quite a coincidence that the IDS is coming up and that I was able to test the camera. the new camera, and just like a huge recommendation to basically use the scope. It's basically already my third scope I use from brand, but the first I brought by myself. And when it comes to recommendations, I would always take it with a camera. It doesn't matter which camera, as long as it's no phone camera. I always use it with this focus, and for sure get the sensor unit. You don't necessarily need the twin for starting with scope. We just use the regular advanced because it's quite customizable, upgradable. So when you feel comfortable using a Flexion Advanced and you want to buy a second scope or just update it, you just can buy this block and basically switch them, which is really a cool idea. And you have a lot of options when it comes to wall mount, seal mount, floor mount, whatever mount. But that's basically, in my eyes, it's a very good idea to basically start using a scope. And I can really recommend the CJ one, although I don't get anything paid from CJ Optics to present you this video.